I like salad. Do you like salad?
Hi, I'm Hostion Ho. I'm living in Vancouver, BC, Canada, unceded territory of Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. I'm an immigrant to Canada from China.
Hey everyone, I'm Andrea coming to you from Victoria, but more importantly known as unceded Akwesasne territory of the Lekwungen speaking peoples, the Songhees and Esquimalt First Nations, and I am an immigrant from the United States of America. And you're listening to
Canadian salad.
Canadian salad. Welcome back, everybody. It's great to have you all here with us on another day in the third month of the year, which is wild. I feel like we just got over New Year. Well, we did.
I know. Oh,
Yeah,
what we did? What
we
New
did.
New Year? We
Both New
did not
Years.
long ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, both New Years. But yeah,
Yes,
time really flies. Oh
it
my God,
does. I know.
things
We
happen
must.
really quickly.
They have. They have. And you know what they say? Time flies when you're having fun. So we must be just having
Ooh.
oodles of fun. Not working, no life
hmm
responsibilities, adulting.
I hope that's everyone's new
Ex-
year so
yeah,
far. Not
exactly.
really for me. That's not my reality, but
No, same.
striving for that, going to that
Yes,
direction.
yes, we are. Yes, we are. And
Yes.
yeah, I'm excited to talk about this topic today, Hoshin. I know you kind of took the baton and you did a lot of research. Yeah, do you want to share with everyone what we're going to talk about today?
Yes, today we are gonna talk about mother tongue and
Oh
multiculturalism
my
in Canada.
gosh. In Canada, I feel like this is going to be very educational. I know I'm going to learn a lot only because I feel like there is a lot of pride in Canada, like, oh, we're multicultural and we have a multiculturalism act and that's good, but what does that really mean and how does that relate to mother tongue? So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, as someone who me speak
Yeah.
a language other than English, obviously
hmm
have a mother
hmm
tongue, I definitely have a strong relation to the language that my mother tongue because I use that to speak to my family because my family is still back in China,
Right.
and it is a very important part of it's an important tool, I would say, for me to remind me of where I was before and where I am now, I
Right.
guess.
hmm
Yeah.
hmm
And of course, today we're gonna talk about more of that. We probably talk in a very a bigger picture in Canada in general,
Yeah.
and also get back to individual level. How is that mean to us, to everyone here as
Yeah.
well? But before going there, Andrea, I know you speak English
I
as
do.
your mother tongue.
And
I
American. American, I would say, is my mother tongue. It's
American is
American.
your
It's
mother
not even
tongue.
English.
So, what's your thought on that?
Yeah, well, I will say that I did like growing up because we did and I think it was episode 4 or something, and I talked about my mother and her side of the family immigrating from Mexico. And I do remember there was a mother tongue that was in my family. I remember my great uncle Joe would always speak Spanish when we met with him, but because my grandfather left my mom when she was very young, that practice of that language was not in her household, and so it was very much not there. And then then she had me. She wasn't speaking Spanish, so but I always wanted to revitalize that. I always wanted to come back to that, and I took Spanish in high school and I took Spanish in college, and I have tried to embrace and practice even with there's a little mercado down here in Victoria that I like to go to sometimes and shop. And his name is Ricardo, the owner. And he says, you can only
Mm-hmm.
speak Spanish here. I said, okay. So every time I go in, I'm really, really trying. And so there is a part of me that is wondering, oh, I wonder what it would be like to be fluent in that. But also, I feel like because she passed away and because I never knew my grandfather, that language is very much tied to them and their memory. So it is something that I wish I had more of, to be quite honest. So,
Mm-hmm.
what about you, Hoshin? You do have a mother tongue other than English. Yeah, how would you say, yeah, what is that been? You alluded it to a little bit, but then also what does that look like here coming to Canada?
Um, First, my mother tongue, to be specific, is Cantonese because I speak Cantonese at home with my family.
Okay.
Even though when I say Chinese, most people would think of maybe Mandarin first. But I
Okay.
think being able to speak Cantonese and write in Cantonese uh, can differentiate myself from like this kind of general idea what people think Chinese are. Because I
Mm,
don't, I mean, I do speak Mandarin, write in Mandarin as well, but culturally identify definitely more Cantonese. So
okay.
it gives me a bit of a unique perspective of how I see myself and how I can perceive other people see me. But I also do realize with the years I live here, which is this is my 10th year in Canada, a
Wow, a
decade, literally.
decade. Wow. We should have a big
Yeah, a
party.
decade. Thank you. Always
Oh,
21.
yeah, I'll give you a little
Forever
cake with a
21.
10 on it. Yeah.
I do realize I'm slowly losing it like a lot, especially the more I talk to my mom, the more I realize sometimes I struggle more and more to think of Cantonese words to use. I mean, I also dream in English now, which is also a sign that I have like my brain already kind of converted into English
I see.
autopilot mode. Cantonese is no longer the autopilot mode for me,
Yeah.
which is in many ways very sad for me
Yeah.
because like I just
Mhm.
hope someday I won't lose it so much that I can't even speak to my mom in a very fluent way.
Yeah.
Especially I love writing too. So writing, not being able to write Cantonese as much as I used to would be a very, sad thing for me.
Yeah, of
Um,
course.
yeah, but I do had a lot of hope because the one thing of good about Vancouver is there's a big Cantonese community,
Mm,
and being able to speak that outside of, with my mom and then out, just out and about, I can still have friends I can speak Cantonese with, which is really great. And I really
mm,
appreciate that. And I understand that for many people, maybe live in smaller places, cities that don't have that luxury, so I treasure it very much. And I think people who speak my other mother tongue, mother tongue other than English will can relate to this is
mm.
sometimes when you go out and you see someone probably from the same country that you were from, and then you realize they speak the same language. You're like, you first scream, I can't scream. I don't know where you hear my voice. I can't scream. And then you're like, oh my God, you speak that too. And then you just like converse a little
Yeah.
bit in your mother tongue. And that's always such a joy. It always such a joy. Just
Mm,
a small spark of
mm,
joy,
mm.
realizing someone speaks the same language as you other than English.
Yeah.
Um, that's always fun.
Wow. So then you see maybe the community here in Canada, the Cantonese community, as a way to kind of keep that mother tongue alive, would you say?
I would say so. Like that's one
Yeah.
of the reasons I also volunteer in the Chinese Canadian Museum because the museum is trilingual. The museum is English and then
Beautiful.
traditional character and simplified character. So like, and also some of the people there speak Cantonese as well. So it also that's why I volunteer every week because it helps me to
Yeah.
retain my Cantonese, not just speaking, also writing and just seeing it there, being
Yeah.
continue to remind myself that this is my
Mhm,
culture and I cannot
mhm.
lose it.
Yeah.
And yeah, and that's beautiful for me.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
There's so much of identity tied to language is what I'm hearing. And I think,
Yeah,
yeah, we're gonna touch on
definitely.
that a little bit
We
more.
definitely would
But
do. Yeah,
yeah,
let's move on. And I think we all know, like Canada, of course, we keep saying Canada, the very multicultural country, because
right.
multiculturalism is like a theme, is like the selling point in many ways in the
Multi
international.
many culture,
Yeah, yeah,
culture, too many
multicultural.
cultures.
There's
Okay.
many cultures here for sure for
Yeah.
Canada, but multicultural also means multilingual, obviously, because language and
Yes.
culture cannot be separate. They always have to be together. And so Canada, because it's multicultural, is all also very multilingual.
Mm,
Um, and based on the 2021 census by Statistics Canada, 75.5 Canadians speaks English as their first language, while
okay.
21.4 speaks French.
Interesting.
That
Hmm.
means there's only about 97% of people speak English and French as first language.
Okay.
And
Right.
then also 1 in 5 households are multilingual, means they speak multiple languages at
Wow.
home. So for
Mm.
example, I mean, I can see maybe like the mother, maybe the parents are immigrant from, let's say, China, and then they have a kid, and then of the kid will grow up here, speak English, and then the parents speak English too, so they converse in English
Yeah.
and Chinese, constantly, and then makes the household multilingual. And which I know many households like that. I know many born and raised Canadian here that if
Mhm.
that their parents are immigrant from somewhere, and that they usually speak multiple languages at home, which I
Yeah,
find it fascinating.
it is. Well, and that's actually a large statistic, 1 in 5. That's practically 20% of the
Yeah,
population is multilingual. I mean, we have our friends, Sibi and Alice, Sibi, Senegalese, French.
English, yeah.
Alice is Vietnamese. And so their son, Mason, is growing up speaking Vietnamese, French, and
French
English.
and
And
English. I know. I
like
mean, they are a
three
multilingual
languages.
household.
Yeah, they are, which is beautiful. And it's amazing because as a kid, when you are younger, that is the time to really learn another language because it's very much tied to how you learn about your world. Whereas when we're adults, it's much, much harder to learn another language because we have a whole lot of complexities there. But
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
And also based on that statistics, there's also increase in languages, which means the multilingualism is like getting more and more diverse. But that's because every year Canada has an increase of immigrant influx coming in.
yes,
So we have more
yeah,
people coming in, and a lot of them speak other different languages. So it keeps our multilingualism going. But a single household is facing a decrease in mother tongue being spoken in the house. Means we have more people coming in speak different languages, which is great. But then for people
right.
already here, through the generations, their mother tongue slowly is
Mm,
getting lost in the sauce in
yeah.
through the ages, which is also a factor we need to face.
Yeah, and related to your what you said earlier too, how you feel it slowly leaving. You're not
Yeah,
dreaming in Cantonese. You're not speaking in Cantonese as much as you were. And so that makes sense. I mean, what was it in 2021 Stats Canada came out with? It's there are over 450 mother tongue languages currently spoken in
yeah,
Canada. That's a
yeah.
lot of languages and it's beautiful, and to see them die out like that is sad because like you said, language is tied to culture and identity and a whole set of traditions and ideas and
Yeah,
pieces that make you who you are.
I agree. Like, I think Canada, in the bigger picture, in the big landscape, more and more immigrant coming in is definitely helping this kind of multilingualism. It keeps it going, more language still presence in Canada. But if you really zoom in to see in every single household, once they moved here, it's almost like it's very difficult for every household to keep their kids and their grandkids to speak
Yeah.
the same mother
Hmm.
tongue that they have. And then
Hmm.
not to mention even more generation down because a bigger environment, everything's in English or French.
Right,
Especially
right.
for indigenous communities, there's very little program, very little spaces for people to kind of have that space to keep their mother tongue, like to practice their mother tongue, to just visually see it. That's why
Hmm.
I also have to like specifically go to the Chinese Canadian Museum for me every week to just
Yeah.
keep that alive for me. Otherwise, on a
Hmm.
day-to-day basis, I don't get to speak Cantonese as much as I want.
Hmm.
I mean, I
Right,
guess I can talk to my mom every day if I want to, but
right.
that would be my only source otherwise.
Right, right. And I wonder if part of the reason why, I mean, I would be interested to see and maybe why this happens. I mean, you alluded to just we're being surrounded by people who speak English, everything's in English. Um, but I know in talking to immigrant parents,
Hmm.
and even learning about the Chinese Exclusion Act, sometimes the second or third generation really has this complex identity of I want to be Canadian, quote unquote. I want to fit in. And even other older generations want that as well, right? They don't want what happened to them in the 1920s with the Chinese Exclusion Act to happen again. So the more you can fit in, the more you can sound Canadian, the better you'll have, the easier time you'll have, and you won't maybe have to deal with racism or oppression or being singled out because you speak different or you have an accent, right? So I do feel like in people that I've spoken to, there is a fear to keep that mother tongue language just because they want to make sure that their children and children's children are able to live happily and freely without repercussions. And that's very, very sad because,
Mm-hmm.
right, we know the history of Canada, we know what's happened, and I understand why people are afraid. I get it. I get why some people are like, nope, we're just going to speak English in the house, because they just want a way to navigate and in some ways survive. But people shouldn't have to just survive a new country. You
Yeah.
shouldn't have to have that.
I think to kind of build on your point, within the Chinese Canadian communities, that the friends I have, there's this concept of perfect English exists. Perfect in the sense that you have to speak perfect grammar, use a right word, right tone,
Mm,
right tenses, but also with the right accent.
mm,
Yeah, there's this kind of concept that if only if you speak with a fair North American accent, like even quote unquote a Canadian accent, that's the bar that you made it, that you become this
wow.
perfect immigrant. That's this ideal assimilated or integrated
Right, right.
immigrant,
Of
which
course.
is for me is an absurd, very absurd
It
idea.
is. It
Yeah,
is. Yeah.
but that idea, I mean, as you mentioned, I think all of what you mentioned are probably the reason why this kind of concept exists because oh, they want to be part of them. They don't want to stand out. They want to show that oh, I'm one of you. Like I don't pick me out. I
Right.
am assimilated. I'm as white as possible now.
Hmm.
Um, and
Hmm.
then so I get the reason, but in that emphasis, of course, kind of kills or discourage them to maintain what they have, put
Right.
all their energy just to speak this quote unquote perfect English.
Hmm.
And that accelerate the pace of losing their mother tongue for
Hmm.
sure. That's
Right.
how I see
Right.
it. Yeah.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So we just mentioned, the kind of landscape of multilingualism in Canada. So
Right.
why do we think mother tongue is important to us? What do you think? Why do you think it's important to us?
Well, I mean, so I hear your perspective and I relate to that too. I mean, I alluded to this a bit earlier about not having that connection to my mother's side of the family, my grandfather's side, and not knowing their story and what, brought them to the America to settle, to integrate, not knowing their struggle as people. I feel like in some ways, not having that language in the forefront of my tongue is a further degree of separation from something that really means a lot to me. And so
Hmm.
I see that echoed in what you're saying that not having that mother tongue, not having that connection, not having that identity, because it is a huge part of identity, um,
Hmm.
then you'd feel lost. You feel like, well, then who am I? I'm not
Hmm.
Canadian enough, quote unquote, because I've been
Hmm.
told and shown that I'm not Canadian enough because I don't
Hmm.
sound
Hmm.
this perfect accent. But also, I'm not living in my country of origin, so these words are slowly slipping. So then some people tell me that I'm not, Chinese enough, or I'm not American enough, or I'm not, Mexican enough. And so then your sense of identity gets really, really lost.
Yeah.
And that's why it's so important to keep, I think, because it's a huge part of what makes us who we are. Um,
Hmm.
so how
I think
about
you're
you?
right on.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're right on. To continue, I want to mention like a story. I think I told you that before. My one of my previous partner had told me once that why don't I speak more like Canadian?
Yeah.
Um, because obvious I have an accent, and I remember this one time we were, I think, some sort of event, and there's this also another Chinese immigrant, and he speak like perfect, like quote unquote perfect Canadian accent. And
Mm,
then we learned that he actually been here even less time than I was. And then my ex-partner, they were just like, why, he can speak such good accent, why don't you? I remember that feeling when he told me that I would just feel denied. This kind of
yeah.
I moved here, I worked my ass off to be here and
Right.
trying my best to, integrate, assimilate whatever the stage I was. And yet because I don't sound with that kind of quote unquote perfect Canadian accent, I got denied that somehow I still not good enough. I need to be at that level to be a
Mm,
Canadian. And so I think that is a great example of how you have to kind of eliminate part of you
Yeah.
just to be in some part, to be
Yeah.
Canadian. That for me is
Yeah.
just insane. That kind of
It
denial of
is.
my
It
my
is.
who I am. And I think if losing a mother tongue probably gonna be like that. That's how I see it. That you
Mm-hmm.
just eliminate part of you, take part of you out just to be in this. And that
Mm-hmm.
is not, for me, that's definitely not the way to go for anyone.
Mm-hmm.
Especially, it's just a lot of this study also shows that being multilingual or retaining your mother tongue actually have great psychological health benefits. Like
Oh,
one of the article that I found from the Journal of Criminal Justice, and they studied the association between multilingualism and psychopathic personality traits, and realized
interesting.
there's a
Okay.
negative association. Means if you actually be able to speak multiple languages, you're actually less likely to be a psychopath.
Well, Ocean, if you see me in jail one day for something that I did, you'll probably know why, because I only speak American. That's
So for
interesting.
yeah, so like it has its benefit just for that. But of course, it's kind of like a side note. But for me, the most important part of maintaining a mother tongue, of course, as you mentioned, the identity part, which we
Yeah.
both allude to it, which is really important. There's this play I went to see in Richmond a couple of days ago, actually. It's called J Circle. It's about this Taiwanese girl. The play is a one-woman show. I think her grandma moved here and then her mother grew up here and then she
Okay.
was born and raised here.
Okay.
It's about her grandma passed away and then she was trying to like reconnect her grandma, but because she doesn't speak uh, Mandarin, they're Taiwanese household, so speak Mandarin, and she found it very difficult to connect to her
Mm-hmm.
grandma or like
Mm-hmm.
like she would find it maybe these letters or her mom will like told her grandma's favorite songs, but she can't really connect because she didn't speak the language. So she decided to put herself in Mandarin school to kind of relearn the language because she said, which in the play she said it really well that yes, there's English translation. Her mom can translate everything, for her grandma's maybe letters, songs, or the lyrics, whatever her grandma likes. But like when you are using a different language, is there's like a veil. She always see it with a veil. It's never really clear, really precise how
Mm-hmm.
her grandma was. But being
Yeah.
able to learn Mandarin, she finally can unveil and see how
Yeah.
her grandma was. And for her, it was just like a true moment of we connect with her roots, her family, her grandma specifically. And for her, it's such a great awakening
Wow.
moment.
Mm-hmm.
And I always like that play also touched me a lot because of I'm losing, but I haven't lose completely my Cantonese. So I
Of
don't understand
course.
that parts
Yeah.
particularly that. But I think put myself in their shoes, if I completely not be able to speak Cantonese or specifically very little Cantonese, not able to
Mm-hmm.
read even a letter, I know I will be very sad. I absolutely know I will feel very sad. And
Yeah.
so the part that kind of remind me of is how important it is to that a
Mm-hmm.
language is to yourself, to your family, to a culture bond.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, so that is why um, mother tongue is important to us.
Yeah. And it's your dignity, right? It's that's who you are. Why take that away? Why let that go? Like, I am so sorry that those things were said to you. And I just feel like the more we try to compress people into something that they're not, that's not humanity. Or that's not what
Yeah,
humanity is?
yeah. I
And
mean,
so yeah.
I feel like at least in my experience, it's kind of this hierarchy level in immigrants. Like
Mhm.
the better English you speak, somehow you have a like a high hierarchy because
Mm,
you usually showcase you here longer or you put more effort into speaking that kind of speaking English with a great accent. So like I think for many immigrants, this kind of invisible power to encourage us to
mm,
speak better English, to put more
mm.
effort into speaking English with the perfect accent rather than maintaining what our mother tongue. And I
Yeah.
think in general, that's how it is as well. Like even in everywhere, I think about everywhere, not just like signs or like government documents. Like if you look at like even the media, movies, I remember even sometimes when I went for auditions for shows, movies, whatever, or commercials, like I have been getting notes from directors or whatever that, oh, can you speak a Canadian accent? That
Mm,
somehow I think that kind of invisible requirement and pressure
yeah,
make people want to get rid of
of
what their mother tongue is,
course.
so they can
Yeah,
be this image
right.
for maybe for commercial, for composer reasons, for or hierarchy reasons, for employment, all of that. That is
Yeah,
definitely a very complex kind of socio, cultural, even
it is.
economical
It is.
pressure for people to do that. Yeah.
Yeah. It's also one of
But
those things where I mean maybe you've experienced this, I don't know, where people you start talking and some uh ignorant white person says, "Well, your English is so good." It's this condescending
oh,
thing, and it's just like that measurement of what's good as far as like how you speak a language is just absurd because
yes.
English, let's face it, I used to have this t-shirt and it used to say, English doesn't just borrow from other languages, it follows other languages down dark alleys and rummages through its pockets for loose grammar.
Mm,
That language, yeah, that language steals from so many different languages. It is not
yeah.
an indigenous language in and of itself. It's just not,
Yes, because
right?
keeps evolving. Agree. Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. I agree with that. So, the kind of microaggression sometimes, but again, that kind of
Yes.
microaggression sends a message. That
Yes, it
sentence,
does.
oh, your English is so good, that sends a message. Is so-called good or not good. And that
Right.
gives people the idea of, oh, I should be good. I want to be good, so I have to do that.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
we should definitely eliminate that kind of microaggression because it's not good for
Absolutely. No.
multilingualism in
Uh-uh.
general.
Mm-mm.
And to go to another level in a whole country kind of level, like if we are a true country for multiculturalism, we are a true country for multilingualism as well.
Yes.
So for the country, keeping our mother tongue is also helping the country to maintain its multiculturalism, to maintain its diversity in culture as well. Because
Right.
again, language is culture. You take away a language, there's no culture exists. No one can access to that culture.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Language is in many ways more than a tool to access
Right.
culture. Because language itself, it has logic. Like
Mm-hmm.
being able to speak a language,
Mm-hmm.
you will automatically adapt a certain personality because the language that you speak has a certain logic, has a certain way of expressing things. Some are more precise in certain aspect of human life, some are more ambiguous. So being able to access different vocabularies in a specific language forms how your mind think, how your
Right.
mind express things. And
Absolutely.
that itself also give you tools to access more than the culture, but the mindset of a certain
Right.
culture. And that's very important. And through centuries of human history, if you control one's language, you control their mind, you control the whole
Yes.
group. Same look at
Absolutely.
like a residential school, for example. They're so successful, well, quote unquote successful, for Western school to
Yeah.
eliminate Aboriginal culture because they forbid them to speak their language. They
Right.
cannot speak their language.
And that
That's
was the
why
next generation of
exactly
speakers. Yeah,
exactly. That's
exactly.
why like the Aboriginal kind of culture can lose so fast because language doesn't
Yeah.
exist. Then you cannot
Yeah.
access to anything. You cannot access to stories. You cannot access to tales, family
Right.
histories. You cannot access to
Traditions,
traditions,
history.
especially
Mm-hmm.
songs, all of that. Because
Mm-hmm.
especially many Aboriginal language are not like there's no written form. A lot of them are, only passed down by
Or
oral. Yeah, oral
right.
passed down by oral. So that's another element of that as well. So
Yeah.
for us to maintain the multiculturalism, to maintain that diversity of culture
Mm-hmm.
in Canada, we have to stand by multilingualism for
We
sure.
do. We do. Yeah.
Yeah,
Let's not repeat the past that we made and that we still are trying to force people into even subtle microaggressions way, but that is still a way of saying, no, no, you must conform, you must sound this way, you must be this way in order to be accepted. Right?
exactly.
So there may not be a current legislation, although the Indian Act is still in law and that still does like anyway, that's a whole other thing. I get so
Yes.
But all that to say that, yeah, do what we can to make sure that we're not controlling people. So
Yes.
we adapt, so we keep multilingualism. So we make sure and we fund language revitalization programs, and we continue to treasure and be curious about other people's languages and traditions and cultures, because it's just going to make us all better in the long run. It's going to make us all safer. It's going to make us all
Yeah.
happier.
And it's fun. Most importantly, it's really
Yeah.
fun. Like
Yes.
I don't know whether you be in like situations like when someone taught you like a new phrase in a new language, it's like, oh, and then you're
Yes.
like, oh, by the way, my language will speak this. And then you just kind of keep exchanging like how you say differently, how you phrase something differently in your own
Oh,
language.
yeah.
It's always such a fun moment.
It
Um,
is. Yeah.
Now that, we established that, what can we
Yes.
do? What can we do to make this turtle island
Yeah.
a better place for multilingualism to grow, to flourish?
Mm.
Do you have any tips?
Well, one huge thing I think is just more funding to support language revitalization. So, I don't know if you've heard of First Voices, but First Voices actually began by here in BC, the First Peoples Cultural Council. And First Voices is an online space for communities to share and promote their language, oral culture, and linguistic history. So, there are so many uh, First Nations and Indigenous communities that are adopting this virtual way of preserving their language, and these language revitalization programs are happening in BC and in other provinces. Um, they have been funded by the Crown, by BC, but what we're facing now is funding cuts for those language revitalization efforts, and that's a huge disservice to the things that the government itself was trying to get rid of. So there's been a huge call to action that keeping that funding and keeping those programs going is a way to respond to the 94 calls to action outlined in the Truth and Reconciliation Act. So we definitely want, I think there needs to be a heavy emphasis for funding to keep and preserve Indigenous languages. That means Indigenous languages that originated here in Canada, but also that should be Indigenous languages that people come with uh, in Canada. That so your Cantonese speakers, are there ways that our schools can fund programs that help kids have that Cantonese experience, maybe 30 minutes a day or, once a week or something like that. I think pouring our resources into that language revitalization is a huge way. Do you have any suggestions, Hoshin?
Yeah, and I want to mention one thing is the one tips I would like to give is I think Canada should remove itself from the bilingual model. Yeah, I know
Okay.
I think everyone knows in Canada the bilingual model as English and French as the official
Okay.
language of the country. So everything, most funding about language or interpretation goes into preserving English and French, especially French, because of course we're Quebec there is heavily enforcing um, French, revitalization because there's compared to English, it's a way smaller population in Canada speaks
Mm-hmm.
French, and like even Quebec, I don't know whether there's a policy that I believe is as an immigrant after you would come to immigrate to Quebec, I think after 2 years or 3 years, you cannot use any access to any official public services using other language except French.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's gross.
unlike can
It's
compare to
gross.
like and
Yeah.
compared to Vancouver in Richmond, not the same. Richmond,
Yeah.
like you can get a driver's license test, get your driver's license test in Mandarin. There's
Wow. I
multiple
didn't
language. I
know
think
that.
there's 10 plus languages offered in Richmond at least. I believe 10 plus language offered that you can take this public services you can access in the other languages, but not in
Wow.
Quebec, for
Quebec, you need
example.
to take some notes. I think you need to be the biggest listener of this podcast. We're not looking for you to sponsor us though, because we would want to talk about what we wanted to talk about. Anyway,
Yeah, but
yes. So
but
yeah,
but the bilingual model really
yeah,
forces I think keeps the government in a very narrow space. Oh, when we talk about language preservation or revitalization, that's the tool we need to care about, and that
interesting.
hence all the funding goes to them, which is
It does.
where I
Yeah.
get back to your point that the funding way it goes. And in terms of message wise for immigrants, oh, that's the two language I have to adapt. And other
Right.
languages, the government doesn't encourage. Like I should not do that.
Right.
So I think that we should just erase that. Just a multilingual model will be way better.
Yes.
It definitely opens our view better than only two
Right.
options.
It does. And if
Yeah.
Canada is a nation of immigrants, let's make that happen. Right?
Yeah.
You're not showcasing immigration and how you're this diverse country and look at us, woo woo. If you're not even giving that accessibility for people who live in this country to have that multilingual adaptability, right? If you're
Exactly.
just confining it to two, then you're saying these are the two windows. Pick one,
I
right?
mean, also it's very kind of colonial, like right, is the
Yes,
this
it
the
is.
colonizer's language.
It
Like that's the
is.
language they wanted to like that's it.
English
And
is a
it's
colonizing language, like in and of itself. The fact
yeah,
that it's not even indigenous,
it
like
really
it
is not.
literally stole from so many other. I mean, if you look at like the research, it's like borrowed words. No, no, no. Let's because English redefined what those words were too, right?
Yeah,
So yeah.
it is true.
Anyway, I have a beef with
Yeah,
English language. Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah, yeah. No,
And
I
I
agree.
think, people should just learn a language. Everyone
Oh
should
my
just learn
gosh,
a new language.
yes,
If you only speak
yes.
English, I'm so sorry. Like you should learn the language.
Yes, absolutely. No, it's very, very true. It's and it can be done. I mean, my brother, he loves languages and he's learned Danish. He loves
Ooh.
Denmark, yeah. And so, but he's all self-taught and he listens to Danish news radio. He reads Danish
Oh.
books. So he's only been to Denmark like a small handful of times, like maybe a week at the most. But for him to continue that, right? That's been huge for him to see the world differently. And I think at the end of this month, it's National Indigenous Languages Day, March 31st. So that's
Hmm.
another reminder that Indigenous and mother tongue languages are really, really important. And if they're important to us, let us also work our best to advocate for them being important to everyone else who has their own mother tongue. 450 mother tongues in Canada. We've got a lot of work to do. So,
Yes.
yeah.
Ooh. So
Yes.
there's many options for everyone to learn.
Yes, you are
450.
without excuse, everyone, including myself. So, Hoshin, thank you for this, and thank you for sharing, just your experience. And I just hope I want you to hear this too, that you are as you are, and you are perfect as you are. And you don't need to sound or be anything different than who you are right now in this very moment. So, um,
Oh, I
yeah.
mean, my voice can be better.
Oh, oh, you're singing in the shower.
Yes, I yell too much. It's my voice is like losing my voice. Oh my God.
Oh no, oh
Or
no.
maybe Ursula taking my voice back.
Oh no, dang Ursula, man, don't trust an octopus, I tell you. Well, we're gonna move on to our Canadian salad pop quiz. So
Yay.
yes, so Hoshin, you may not know my answer, but I'm gonna ask it. So is it okay if I go first, my love?
Please
Okay. So how many languages make up the English language?
make up the English language.
Yeah, like how, or another way to say it is maybe the English is made up of how many different languages?
Wow, I feel like there's gonna be a lot. Uh, I don't know, like 25 languages.
20. Oh, wow. Way higher.
Way, way higher.
Yeah.
Ooh,
One more guess.
392.
You were close. 350.
Ah, so at least
So
300.
yeah, you're close. But yeah, 350 languages. And the top language that composes English is Latin.
Done,
So
yeah.
yeah, so Latin and then it's French. But yes, that's a lot of language. And that's what I mean. Like English is it's just made up. We're just like,
Yeah,
oh, well,
it's
that sounds pretty. I guess we'll combine that with this.
yeah, a blend of all the other languages. Yeah.
Yes, yeah, but not in the best way, right? It's not the best blend. It does not like it really respected and kept those cultural meanings. So anyway, well, good job. You came close.
Good. Okay, thank you.
Yes.
My question is quite easy. I think you probably know it. Yeah.
We'll see.
When does the Indigenous Language Act pass?
The Indigenous Language Act.
Yeah, there's an Indigenous Language Act. Yeah.
Was this the act prohibiting
No,
indigenous
the
lang-
Indigenous Languages Act is to the government, commit to fully implement the act to
Oh,
promote, preserve, and revitalize the Indigenous language in Canada.
2017.
Close. Do you
Okay.
want to have one more guess? It's very close.
Okay, 2015.
2019.
2019.
I know it's really
Oh my
recent.
gosh. That is so recent.
It is very recent.
Oh my goodness.
Wow. That also says, the climate, we literally just
It
realized that it's
does.
important.
It does.
It's like, oh, this says the
It
volume
does.
of how we see this.
Yeah, but the volume of hard work to make that happen.
True. I
This
mean,
is why we don't give
definitely.
up. We don't give up,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
We really want to have to pay gratitude to all the Indigenous people to kind of
Yes.
put that forward to push the government to pass that act
Yes.
to
Yeah.
revitalize Indigenous
Yeah.
languages, which because it's
Yeah.
very important. It's definitely a language that I would say the heart of every culture. So yeah,
Absolutely.
we need to
Mm-hmm.
keep that going.
Yeah, let's keep it. So, yeah, this has been so good, Hoshin. Stay tuned, everyone. We are going to talk about our next episode is going to be the culture of humor, jokes, and pranks. So we're going to talk about the
Yeah.
different ways that we as cultures and people from the global community how we think of humor. And if you're listening, please leave us a comment. What give us a review and comment on our Instagram page. We really want to get the podcast more momentum and more feet. So you can find us on Instagram, share us with your friends and family, and drop us a note at via email hello@canadiansalad.ca. We'd love to hear from you.
Yeah. And our Instagram handle is Canadian Salad.
That's right.
You can
Yes.
just find us,
That's right.
follow
Just think
us.
Canada and vegetables. Canada, not Canadian vegetables,
Canadian.
Canadian salad. Anyway,
Yeah, Canadian salad. Everyone
yeah,
loves a salad.
they do. Exactly. Yes. So, thanks again, and we'll talk to you all soon. All
We'll
right.
talk to you soon. Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Canadian Salad is written and produced in British Columbia, Canada by Hoshin Ho and Andrea McCoy. Theme music is by Naver Avatyan from Pixabay.
This has been a good Drinklin production.